Hi, I'm Patrick Reagan. The next videos are called Ports, Protocols, and Services, Part A and B, that covers the common protocols used in the TCP/IP protocol suite. Part A will discuss SSH, Telnet, SMTP, DNS, DHCP, HTTP, HTTPS, and RDP. As with most of my videos, there are practice questions at the end of the video. In the last video, Part 2, TCP, UDP, and Ports, we discussed TCP, UDP, and ports. Every time a TCP/IP host communicates with another TCP/IP host, it will use the IP address and port number to identify the host and service or program running on the host. This enables multiple services to run simultaneously on the same computer and receive data intended just for them. The TCP/IP port number is a logical connection placed by client programs to specify a particular server program running on the computer on the network defined at the transport layer. A socket is a virtual endpoint of a two-way communications link that acts as a communication channel between two applications on different devices, allowing them to exchange data over a network. A web page is a hypertext document on the web that is delivered by a web server to the user using a web browser. The web pages are delivered via the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP. HTTP and HTTPS creates connections via TCP. The URL that begins with HTTP uses port 80, has content sent in clear, non-encrypted text. The URL that begins with HTTPS, which uses port 443, has content sent as encrypted content via secure sockets layer or transport layer security. While the term SSL is still commonly used, the actual technology is largely superseded by transport layer security, or TLS. SSL is considered an outdated and vulnerable protocol, and modern web browsers and servers prioritize TLS for security. Essentially, SSL is often used informally to refer to the more secure TLS. Initial encryption is done using public keys stored in a digital certificate that the client will use to initially encrypt a message that can only be read by the server. Today, many websites will redirect HTTP connections to HTTPS to provide better security and privacy. When you visit a web page, you had to type in a URL which included a domain name or host name that points to a computer. For you to connect to the computer, you need to use Domain Name System, or DNS, to resolve the names to IP addresses. DNS uses port 53. Early DNS used UDP, but more recent versions were upgraded with reliability, security, and privacy, which uses TCP. DNS uses fully qualified domain names, or FQDNs, to map a host name to an IP address. An FQDN describes the exact relationship between a host and its DNS domain. For example, computer1.sales.microsoft.com represents an FQDN. The Computer1 host is located in the sales domain, which is located in the Microsoft second-level domain, which is located in the .com top-level domain. Because it's so closely tied to the Internet and TCP/IP network, it's an essential service that enables the Internet and network to function, and it is required by many network services, including Active Directory. DNS is a hierarchy distributed naming system used to locate computers and services on a TCP/IP network. DNS clients send queries to a DNS server, and the domain name system receives and resolves queries such as translating a host or domain name to an IP address. DNS is known as Distributed Naming System because the information stored with DNS is not found on any single DNS server. Instead, the information is distributed among multiple DNS servers, all of which are linked into a hierarchy structure. At the top of the tree is the root zone. The tree can then be divided into zones, each served by a named DNS server. Each zone can contain one domain or many domains. The administrative responsibility over any zone can be delegated or divided by creating a subdomain, which can be assigned to a different name server and administrative entity. Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP, is a client-server protocol that automatically provides an IP host with its IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and other IP configuration information. For clients, you should try to avoid static IP configuration. DHCP server listens on UDP port number 67, and client listens to UDP port number 68. The DHCP process begins with clients broadcasting a request. Remember, broadcasts don't go through routers. If the DHCP client and server are in different broadcast domains or subnets, a DHCP helper or DHCP relay agent will listen for the broadcast and will relay the request to a DHCP server directly. The DHCP process, known as DORA, starts with Discover, where the client broadcasts to DHCP server to discover available DHCP server. The next step is Offer, where the DHCP server to the client sends some IP address options to the client. The request stage, the client chooses an offer and makes a request to the DHCP server. During the acknowledgement phase, the DHCP server sends an acknowledgement to the client. When you set up a DHCP, you have to define scopes and the scope properties for each subnet. A scope will include the subnet address range, excluded addresses, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS server, VoIP servers, lease duration, and so forth. When an IP address is assigned, it is leased to the client and is reclaimed after a lease period. Most DHCP servers will keep a list of past assignments so that it can try to assign the same IP address to the client. It will try to renew the IP address lease at the 50% mark of the lease time. You can reserve an IP address based on the MAC address so that you can always get the same address and to prevent other systems from using that address. An email server, also called a mail server, is essentially a computer system that sends and receives emails. When you send an email, it goes through a series of servers to reach its final destination using the SMTP protocol. Based on the type of action they perform, while a single server can handle all email services, email servers can be categorized into incoming and outgoing email servers. To find the email server that an email needs to be delivered to, it will look up the DNS-MX record for the domain. Email can be accessed and delivered using a variety of protocols, including the following. For receive, Post Office Protocol version 3, or POP3, is used to retrieve email and saves email to the local device by using TCP port 110. Internet Message Access Protocol, or IMAP 4, is used to retrieve email using TCP port 143. Since IMAP is intended to keep the email on the mail server, it is a good option when you have 2 or more people checking the same mailbox or user wants email access from multiple devices. To send, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or SMTP, is an older protocol, but still very common, which is used to send emails using TCP port 25. Simple Mail Transfer Protocol Secure, or SMTPS, is the encrypted version of SMTP that uses port 587. Multi-Purpose Internet Mail Extensions, or MIME, and Secure MIME is used with SMTP to send pictures and other attachments. SMIME allows encryption and signing of MIME data. Other methods of accessing email include Secure Sockets Layer, or SSL, which is used to encrypt data between the email client and the email server. If you're using a browser to access your email, you're most likely using TLS. Exchange Online, which is Microsoft application, uses the Messaging Application Programming Interface, or MAPI, to connect to Microsoft Exchange servers for email, calendar, and contact information. Depending on your email provider, you may need to use 1 or 2 of the previous options to receive and send emails. Unless it's one of the big companies such as iCloud, Microsoft Exchange, Google, Yahoo, AOL, or Outlook.com, you need to check the documentation from the email vendor on settings. Telnet, short for Teletype Network, is a client-server application protocol that provides access to virtual terminals of remote systems on local area networks or the internet. Telnet allows you to connect to a remote computer and run commands as if you were at the computer. Telnet consists of two components: the protocol itself, which specifies how two parties to communicate, and the software application that provides the service. Telnet transmits all information, including usernames and passwords, in plain text, so it is not recommended for security-sensitive applications such as remote management of routers. Because of this, Telnet is not used much today. Telnet uses TCP port 23. Secure Shell, or SSH, is a cryptographic network protocol used for secure remote access to a computer or server over an unsecured network, typically the internet. SSH provides a secure shell environment, allowing users to remotely log into a server and execute commands if they were physically present at the server's console. While it provides the capabilities to connect to a computer with a remote systems command prompt similar to Telnet, it is encrypted. SSH uses TCP port 22. Secure Copy Protocol, or SCP, and Secure File Transfer Protocol, or SFTP, also known as SSH File Transfer Protocol, uses SSH to securely transfer files between the client and server. These utilities provide secure alternatives to traditional FTP or file transfer protocol. SSH supports various methods of user authentication, including password-based authentication, public key authentication, and more advanced methods like multi-factor authentication. Public key authentication is often favored due to its stronger security. Certain accounts should be disabled in SSH, such as the root account used in Linux. You should remove password-based authentication, and you should limit access to SSH by IP address. For security, using public key or MFA is preferred. PuTTY is a free and open source terminal emulator, serial console, and network file transfer application. It supports several network protocols, including SSH, Telnet, rlogon, SCP, and RAW socket connection. PuTTY is widely used on Windows operating systems to establish secure shell or SSH connections to remote servers or devices. Particularly popular among Windows users who need to access Unix or Linux servers or network devices via SSH. WinSCP, short for Windows Secure Copy, is a popular free and open source SFTP, FTP, WebDAV, S3, and SCP client for Windows. It allows users to securely transfer files between a local Windows computer and a remote server or host. WinSCP is widely used by system administrators, web developers, and anyone who needs to transfer files securely between Windows computers and remote servers or hosts. Its user-friendly interface, extensive features, and robust securities make it a vulnerable tool for managing files across different environments. Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, is a proprietary protocol that was developed by Microsoft to connect to another computer over a network connection using the same graphical interface that you would use if you were sitting in front of the physical server. RDP uses TCP port 3389. Typically, you would access computers running Windows remotely using the Remote Desktop Connection, or RDC program, which would allow you to connect to the remote desktop session host or to a remote application. It's usually used to administer computers remotely, including managing services, updating systems, installing software, running programs and utilities, and reboot systems. With remote desktop connections, you can be logged into multiple computers at the same time, and if you have multiple monitors, you can have one on full screen on each monitor. Desktop Services, or RDS, allows users to access a remote computer just as if they're sitting in front of the computer. Within the window, the user has a Start button, desktop applications and folders, as well as access to local resources such as the user's local drive and mapped drives. Question: which of the following ports should be used to securely receive mail that is synchronized across multiple devices? Answer: 993. Question: what port would you use to send an encrypted email? Answer: 587. Question: what port does the DHCP server listen on? Answer: 67. Question: what program uses port 3389? Answer: RDP. Question: what port uses SSH? Answer: 22. Remember, SS kind of looks like 22, and is how I remember that port 22 belongs to SSH. Question: what protocols come to send emails to an email server? Answer: SMTP. Question: what protocol would I use to securely connect to the command prompt of a remote server? Answer: SSH. Match the ports shown on the screen. Answers: HTTP is port 80, HTTPS is port 443, DNS is port 53, RDP is 3389, DHCP is 67, POP3 is 110, IMAP is 143, SMTP is 25, and SMTPS is 587. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, the URL that begins with HTTP uses port 80, has content sent in clear, non-encrypted text. The URL that begins with HTTPS, which uses port 443, has content sent as encrypted content via secure sockets layer or transport layer security. For you to connect to a computer, you need to use domain name system or DNS to resolve the names to IP addresses. DNS uses port 53. Email can be accessed and delivered using a variety of protocols, including Post Office Protocol version 3 or POP3 and Internet Message Access Protocol or IMAP 4. To send email, you would typically use Simple Mail Transfer Protocol or SMTP or Simple Mail Transfer Protocol Secure or SMTPS. Telnet, short for Teletype Network, is a client-server application protocol that provides access to virtual terminals of remote systems on local area networks or the internet. Telnet uses TCP port 23. Secure Shell or SSH is a cryptographic network protocol used for secure remote access to a computer or server over an unsecured network, typically the internet. The Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, is the proprietary protocol that was developed by Microsoft to connect to another computer over a network connection using the same graphical interface that you would use if you're sitting in front of the physical server. RDP uses TCP port 3389. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be TCP/IP, Part 3, Ports, Protocols, and Services, Part B. If you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.